Hi and welcome. I'm Andy Miocha and you are watching A News. Here are the headlines. Thai and Cambodian delegations to meet for ceasefire talks in Malaysia as shelling continues. Israel says it will open routes to allow aid convoys into Gaza. At least 11 people injured in knife attack in Michigan. Thank you for tuning in. Thailand and Cambodia have agreed to hold ceasefire talks in Kuala Lumpur on Monday. Thailand confirmed it's sending a delegation led by the acting prime minister, adding that Malaysia told them Cambodian prime minister would also attend. This comes after US President Donald Trump said both sides are looking for an immediate ceasefire following days of border clashes.
Thailand-Cambodia border shelling continues on Sunday despite the US President Donald Trump's ceasefire call for the leaders of the both countries. According to a social media post by Donald Trump on Saturday, the leaders of Cambodia and Thailand have agreed to hold talks aimed at reaching a ceasefire. Trump stated that he had separate phone conversations with the Prime Minister of Cambodia and the acting Prime Minister of Thailand, during which both sides agreed to immediately meet and swiftly establish a ceasefire and ultimately achieve peace. As shelling persisted along the Thai-Cambodian border for a fourth consecutive day, citizens from both nations on Sunday voiced strong support for a ceasefire and welcomed US President Donald Trump's efforts to bring their leaders to the negotiating table.
I agreed with our leaders' call with Trump and US President Donald Trump's intervention in this ceasefire effort so the people can no longer live in fear and both sides can stop fighting immediately.
If there is a ceasefire, things will be better. It's great that America is insisting on the ceasefire because it would bring peace.
Voices from both sides of the border express hope and relief at the prospect of a ceasefire, eager for peace and a return to normal life.
For me, I think it will be great if the Thai side agreed to stop fighting so both countries can live with peace.
I'm happy. Our brothers and sisters in Kantharalak district of Sisaket, or in Ubon Ratchathani, Buriram and Surin would all be pleased too, so that we can get back to our businesses and people can return to their homes from the shelters. That's good news.
More than 30 people have been killed and 130,000 more displaced in the worst fighting between the Southeast Asian neighbours in 13 years. As both sides prepare for negotiations, hopes grow that lasting peace will soon return to the border area.
Donald Trump has said that a face-to-face meeting between Russian and Ukrainian presidents Vladimir Putin and Volodymyr Zelensky is going to happen. The Russians have earlier said that such a meeting might take place only to finalize an already reached agreement. Meanwhile, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan announced plans to host a Trump-Putin meeting in Istanbul.
US President Donald Trump says a long-awaited face-to-face meeting between Vladimir Putin and Volodymyr Zelensky is going to happen. However, he expressed his regrets it hasn't happened already. Speaking before leaving for Scotland, Trump emphasized that such a summit should have taken place 3 months ago. His remarks come amid heightened diplomatic efforts to end the Russia-Ukraine war. President of Turkey Recep Tayyip Erdogan is now stepping up mediation. He announced plans to bring Trump and Putin together in Istanbul for direct negotiations. Erdogan said Ankara would hold talks with both leaders this week to assess the possibility of hosting the long-anticipated summit. Meanwhile, Russian and Ukrainian delegations met on Wednesday for negotiations in Istanbul's Chiragan Palace. This was their third round of talks after previous sessions happening in May and June. The Ukrainian side proposed a high-level leaders' summit by late August to finalize a peace deal.
The priority number one is to organize a meeting of the leaders of presidents, where participation of President Trump and Erdogan will be most valuable. a real ceasefire and end to all strikes on civilian infrastructure. This can be a crucial first steps towards lasting peace. We proposed to the Russian side to hold such a meeting of leaders until the end of August.
But Russia's delegation dismissed the idea, insisting that a Putin-Zelensky meeting could only occur to formalize an agreement already reached.
For this meeting to happen, we need to work out the deal conditions first and to understand what will be actually discussed at this meeting. Actually, this meeting is not for discussing a deal, but for wrapping it up, signing the final agreement. As the saying goes, the end crowns the work. There is no point in the meeting to discuss all of this all over again.
Still, there was one breakthrough. Both sides agreed on a large-scale prisoner swap. Each side will release 1,200 prisoners of war. Russia also pledged to return the remains of 3,000 fallen Ukrainian soldiers. Ukrainian President Zelensky confirmed that over 1,000 soldiers had returned home, many in poor health after years in captivity. Russia likewise welcomed its freed troops in Belarus, sharing images of emotional reunions. Despite the humanitarian progress, there was no movement toward a ceasefire. The Turkish foreign minister urged both parties to halt what he called a bloody war, but the 40-minute meeting concluded without tangible progress on ending the violence.
Israel's military said it will open humanitarian corridors to allow aid convoys into the Gaza Strip after weeks of mounting international pressure and warnings of starvation. The military also announced it would halt operations each day for 10 hours in parts of Gaza.
Israel, under intense global scrutiny, has resumed airdrops of food supplies. Military footage released on Saturday shows aid boxes parachuting into northern Gaza with flour, sugar and canned goods provided by international agencies. After months of international pressure, aid trucks are finally on the move toward Gaza. Egyptian state media aired footage on Sunday showing convoys of humanitarian trucks departing from the Rafah border crossing. Dozens of vehicles carrying tons of aid are heading to the Kerem Shalom crossing, one of the main access points into southern Gaza. Inside Gaza, humanitarian organizations warn the crisis is beyond urgent. The World Health Organization says starvation is now widespread across the territory, home to over 2 million people. Israel has announced on Sunday tactical pauses in military activity for humanitarian purposes from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m., though many question how safe or effective these windows really are. Thousands of Israelis took to the streets of Tel Aviv on Saturday, voicing their strong opposition to the country's continued military operations in the Gaza Strip and calling for an early ceasefire agreement with Hamas.
We think that there is no point in continuing the war, and everything should be with a solution for both sides. So we just hope that someone will make sure that it happens as soon as possible.
With no end in sight to the conflict, the humanitarian crisis in Gaza continues, and despite fresh aid deliveries, the threat of widespread famine remains.
The second UN Food Systems Summit stocktake is set to open on Monday in Addis Ababa. The three-day event, co-hosted by Ethiopia and Italy, is meant to analyze and address the progress made towards building more resilient and sustainable food systems 4 years after the inaugural summit.
The UN Food Systems Summit opens in Addis Ababa on Monday for a three-day session. Co-hosted by Ethiopia and Italy, the summit marks the second global review since the inaugural event in 2021. It will assess progress in transforming global food systems and accelerate collective efforts toward achieving the Sustainable Development Goals.
In the current UNFSS, I think we should expect more action, and not just action, but collective action, because Africa, despite our fragmented nature, we have common problems in terms of climate change, in terms of food systems fragmentation, in terms of food and nutrition security. So we need to really rally around and advance collective action.
For this year, we expect to see a lot of transformations, information on transformative actions that has taken place in countries that are implementing this food system holistically. You know, the essence is to accelerate the achievement of the SDGs.
The summit aims to bring together governments, civil society, and the private sector to share ideas, forge partnerships, and mobilize resources to build more resilient and equitable food systems.
At least 11 people were injured in a stabbing attack at a Walmart in Michigan. A heavy police and emergency response was seen outside the retail store in Traverse City after a man went on a stabbing spree Saturday afternoon. The 11 injured were taken to hospital and 3 were reportedly undergoing surgery. Police arrested the suspect, saying he used a folding knife and appeared to target people at random. Europe's leading car makers face plunging profits as tariffs and global competition weigh heavily on the sector. Our Anita Sharma has more on the challenges shaping the future of Europe's automotive industry.
Hello everyone, welcome to This Day in Europe. Germany's automotive giant Volkswagen sees a seismic drop in first half performance. Operating profit for the second quarter plunged 29% to 3.8 billion euros. That prompted the company to cut its top-end annual profit margin guidance by 1.5% to 5%. Volkswagen cited tariffs, high restructuring costs, and a shift to lower-margin electric vehicles as major contributors to its weakening results. Volkswagen took a 1.3 billion euro tariff hit due to sweeping U.S. import duties. To resolve this, CEO Oliver Blume is considering major investments in U.S.-based production, particularly for Audi and Porsche, to reduce exposure to American tariffs. Market analysts see the results as a canary in the coal mine for European automakers. Some investors welcome a potential 15% U.S.-EU tariff deal, noting that auto stocks surged after Japan secured such terms with Washington. Now, the EU still sees a trade deal, quote, within reach with the United States and is scrambling to finalize the 15% deal modeled after Japan's arrangement to avoid harsher 30% rates set to begin August 1st. But analysts remain cautious about the auto sector, citing a host of structural challenges: a strong euro, sluggish EV adoption, and surging Chinese competition from brands like BYD that continue to pressure auto profits across the board. And Volkswagen certainly isn't alone here. Stellantis, the company behind Jeep, Peugeot, and Fiat, recently reported a preliminary net loss of 2.3 billion euros in the first half due to 300 million euros in tariff-related charges, suspended production, and costly restructuring efforts, despite shipping 1.45 million vehicles, including Rams. The company is also dealing with recalls in a large number of cars. Volvo Motor Group and others are in a tight spot as well. Volvo CEO called the U.S. tariffs, quote, absolutely unnecessary, and warned of collapsing margins unless trade policy shifts before August. EU automakers are lobbying Brussels to negotiate immediate relief using promised U.S. investments as leverage. European trade officials are exploring options such as import mechanisms that essentially reduce tariffs on EU-made cars exported from U.S. plants, benefiting firms like BMW and Mercedes-Benz that already manufacture in the States. At last check, Volkswagen stock moved higher today in Frankfurt. The company plans to slash up to 35,000 jobs by 2030 and double down on EVs, where margins remain challenging. As for Stellantis, shares are higher in Milan, but down about 33% year to date. Investors are waiting for the July 29th report to see how the company rearranges operations in these very precarious times. Overall, the broader auto sector is sending a clear message. Tariffs are not just cost, They mandate strategy shifts. Whether Europe can strike a fair deal is really crucial here. A 15% tariff compromise could ease immediate pressure, but companies warned that without structural adjustments, profits will continue to contract. As the U.S. deadline nears, investors and policymakers want to see if European automakers can rebound on policy promise or buckle under the global cost of protectionism. From Arnhem, Netherlands, I'm Anita Sharma for A News.
Greece is battling 5 major wildfires across the country. As flames rage near Athens and across Kythera Island, residents are forced to evacuate while firefighters race to contain the fast-moving blazes.
Wildfires have reached communities north of Athens as strong winds and soaring temperatures fuel the flames. In the village of Krioneri, residents were told to evacuate as fires spread rapidly from nearby Drossopigi.
It started from Drossopigi, inside the valley there, and very quickly, because of the wind, it climbed up the hill, joined with another fire front that was up there, and this came towards Krioneri. The wind is terrible. You see what's happening here, the speed. One moment, the fire is here, the next it's across. Everything is very fast.
More than 140 firefighters, helicopters, and aircraft are battling the flames near flammable factories. At least 5 people have been hospitalized, according to ambulance services.
At this moment, if we had left our house, it would have burned completely, like the other time when we left because we were scared. Today we stayed because in seconds the fire was to our right, to our left, all around us. It surrounded us. And we were shouting to put the fire out. Our house is burning, you understand? We would have been left without a home. We must be grateful to the volunteers and the fire service because they rushed immediately. I can't say otherwise, but we are very lucky.
Meanwhile, on Kythera Island, villagers have also been evacuated as smoke clouds fill the sky. Greece faces its 3rd heat wave of the summer, with temperatures reaching up to 44 degrees Celsius. Scientists warn wildfires in the region are growing more destructive due to a fast-changing climate.
Wildfires continue to rage in the Turkish northwestern Bursa province. Several neighborhoods have been evacuated as air and ground crews battle the flames. High temperatures and winds have fueled the spread of the fire. More than 1,700 people have been evacuated from Karahidir, Igdir and Avdancik neighborhoods as a precaution. Around 1,000 firefighters with nearly 500 vehicles and air support are working on containing the blaze. Turkey has finalized a major defense deal with Indonesia, marking the first international sale of its domestically produced Khan fighter jets. At the International Defense Exhibition Fair in Istanbul, Turkish aerospace industries signed a contract with 2 Indonesian defense companies for the export of 48 Khan fighter jets. The deal includes technology transfer and joint production, with deliveries to be completed over 10 years. Over in Georgia, a new generation of tea growers in the Juria region is trying to restore its once great tea industry, reviving plantations and looking to reinvent the country's tea legacy.
In the quiet hills of western Georgia, tea once defined daily life. In the 20th century, Georgia's Guria region was home to a once thriving tea industry that fueled millions of cups across the Soviet Union. At its core stood the Anna Suole Institute of Tea and Subtropical Crops, where scientists worked to perfect cultivation methods. Lika Megraladze grew up here. Her mother was one of those scientists. Today, Lika runs a guest house and cultivates her own patch of tea, preserving a family legacy on once forgotten ground.
It was only one whole Soviet Union researching institute for tea and then as a subtropical culture. And with huge laboratories, different laboratories. It was experimental fields for tea, for different plants. It was experimental tea factories and a lot of tea.
The collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991 brought production to a halt. With markets lost and the country in turmoil, Guria's tea fields were abandoned. By 2016, tea output had plummeted 99% from its height. Now, a generation is trying to revive what was lost. Entrepreneur Nika is among them, turning overgrown plantations into working fields once again. 10 years ago, he began rehabilitating derelict tea plantations, financed partly by a grant from the Georgian government.
We must be different from Chinese tea makers, Taiwan tea makers, because Georgia is Georgia, and we need some niche to make our own tea, because as I said, it collapsed 40 years. 40 years here was happening nothing. Here was jungles, and 10 years ago this plantation, this area has new life. So we are also experimenting in our fields as well, and also in factory to make some new, like wild tea, forest tea.
This time the focus is quality over quantity. Nika and his team want Georgian tea to stand out, not just return.
Georgia has reported a sharp increase in shipments passing through its territory along the Middle Corridor, the route connecting China and Europe via Central Asia and the South Caucasus. According to the country's economy ministry, in the first 6 months of 2025, nearly 10,000 shipping containers were transported along the corridor, which is more than a 170% increase compared to the same period last year. The Baku-Tbilisi-Kars railway also saw a major boost, carrying more than 9,300 containers, up from just 160 last year. A senior advisor to Iran's supreme leader called the Zangazour corridor project a cover for broader projects aiming to undermine Iran's national security. Ali Akbar Velayati said the objective of the corridor is to sever Iran's link with the Caucasus and impose a land blockade on Iran and Russia. He added that Iran has opposed such actions from the outset, even deploying forces to the borders and conducting deterrent exercises. Kyrgyzstan hosted the International Gallops 2025 equestrian rally, with 70 riders from 12 countries competing in a 5-day endurance race.
The International Equestrian Rally Gallops 2025 was held in mid-July in northeastern Kyrgyzstan. The 5-day race started in the high-altitude village of Kyrgyzstan, about 3,000 meters above sea level, and concluded near the scenic Songkol Lake. Teams of 5 or 6 riders covered approximately 200 kilometers. The event, inspired by a Paris-Dakar-style endurance and orienteering concept, aims to showcase not only horses but also diverse cultures and landscapes.
What is very important in the concept is to discover an equestrian horse race, equestrian horse breed, and to find the different horse culture in the world. So with that concept of the gallops, we discover the people, we discover also the horses locally in different countries. So we did already Oman, we did Morocco, we did India with Rajasthan, and we did also in Jordan, and now we do in Kyrgyzstan.
Participants also highlighted the cultural and scenic appeal of Kyrgyzstan.
First, I want to discover the landscapes and to meet the people, to see how the mountains look and how it is to ride here, because I ride horses in France, and I'm happy to see how it is here in the country and to discover the culture also.
This year's rally marks the 5th edition of the Gallops, a renowned international equestrian event uniting horse enthusiasts from across the globe.
Well, that's all we have for you for now. Thank you so much for watching, and do stay tuned to A News.